Hello Raiders, this is Ezra and welcome to my Bastion. The much anticipated Guardian Ring, the upgrade to the sparring pit, is out today, and I just wanted to take a few minutes to talk about what I'm doing and how I'm using the Guardian Ring, which may or may not be the same as you all, as well as what I perceive to be the relative value of each item, and a few things to be on the lookout for when it comes to using the ring to make your champion stronger. Now, no changes here to the sparring pit. It's what we expected. Faction Guardians came through as expected. I have gone through and already put my dupes in place for the fair or very small number of legendary dupes that I had. To me, that's not really as interesting just because I have so few duplicate legendaries. I will say that I think the relative usefulness of each of the tabs is in this order for a reason. Sparring Pit is awesome. You can make yourself stronger, either make food or actually level champ you're going to use. Faction Guardians, in my mind, is the next most important place to use your dupes. In this case, let's just drill down into my Banner Lords. I got a dupe, Killian the Lucky. And I think smart money, especially if you don't have very many dupes, is putting your duplicate champions, in your Faction Guardians first, because this gives 10% extra hit points to everyone that is of legendary Bannerlord status. And so, yes, if you then go look at my index and who I have in the Bannerlords, I don't have much in the way of dupes, but my Septimus will be a little bit harder to kill. My Killian, more hit points there. My Sigmund, he was a fusion, so I only have one copy of him, but he'll be a little bit tougher. And then Helior also a little bit harder to kill. And I think this is my message to everyone here is, before you go and sacrifice a bunch of champions, either by empowerment or unbinding, first set up your Faction Guardians, because you get more bang for the buck out of the duplicates you have here. Now, I have not yet assigned epics and legendaries, and for most factions I'm just going to go through and pick what duplicates I have in order to make all the champions stronger. Essentially, I think I have enough duplicate epics that very shortly every epic I have will have 10% more hit points, 10% more attack, 15% more accuracy and resist, blah blah blah. It's interesting here, and this is what I want to point out, is as the rarity of your champions increases, the amount of resist you get increases, and the amount of speed you get increases. And it's important to know this, because for things you have to speed tune, this may change what your tune is or how things happen. And I think about this in my clan boss team. I have no legendaries in my clan boss team, but I do have a combination of epics and rares. And this is where I think you need to be careful and understand what you're doing. Looking at my team right now, my default team is this. It's the easy Maneater, unkillable team that does all affinities of Ultra Nightmare Clan Boss, and it only takes one simple change to get Nightmare. But because you have to worry about stun targeting, I'm concerned that powering up Bulwark, my dwarf who is a stun target, at a different rate than the other epics, might change how the clan boss targets, as well as I'm not going to add speed to either Dark Elf rares, Ogryn Tribes epics, Dwarf rares, or Barbarian epics, because it will throw off my speed tune. It's a relatively narrow range of things that you have to you have to worry about. So this is me now back in my Faction Guardians section. I will say I really like this UI that lets you see, what you have set and what you haven't set. I went through all of my factions and set up Faction Guardians as I described I would earlier. So I really like this UI for a lot of reasons. But like I found out some neat things, like diving into my Knights Revenant, for example. When it shows you your dupes here, like it lets you see in one place. I've never really been satisfied with the champion section where you see your vault and your actual champion storage separately, and it scrolls differently and sorts differently. Like here, seeing all your dupes together lets you answer really interesting questions like, why do I have 4 miscreated monsters? I have no idea, but I can probably get rid of 1 or 2 of these because I don't need them any longer to save space. The same goes for like Kitus here. I think that there's a lot of other nice things you can do with this UI that even aren't necessarily related to just setting up Faction Guardians. It also lets you see where you might want to collect a few more dupes. Like for instance, I look here at my Dark Elves. I don't have enough duplicate Dark Elves if I ever wanted to power myself up this way. I've made the choice not to do that because Painkeeper is in my current clan boss team. But if I, get a different team or get enough other champs that don't need Painkeeper, I would want to get the +3 speed for my Dark Elves, but I need some extra dupes to do that. So I think there's a lot of other like nice side effects you can use here to figure out things about your champions just by looking at it slightly differently. And at this point, I really have no plans to empower anyone. Like the only person I really even have it as a potential for is I do have 3 Longbeards. Odd numbers don't help because you need, duplicates in multiples of 2 to increase every faction's rarity item. So in theory, this is the only person I even have for a candidate of empowering. And, an extra little bit of, especially, attack and maybe hit points for Longbeard isn't something that I would really push at this point. I personally don't think I will ever consider empowering anyone until I have enough duplicates to fill up my Faction Guardians for everyone. And then I might use the leftovers at that point for empowerment. The only potential exception to that is should I end up with multiple Arbiters, I might really power up an Arbiter to get the extra speed for arena use, but that's the only thing I can really see myself doing right now. And then in terms of unbinding, I think I will only ever unbind a champion if I get more duplicates after that champion is fully empowered. So that seems like such a long way away to me that I don't think I'll ever do it. Part of the reason here is the extremely high prices of everything, and the other is just returns for unbinding seem so low as to not be worth it. You have to be like such a mega whale or a kraken to really, I think, take advantage of that I don't foresee myself ever being there. So now I've gone through my Guardian ring, talked about who I have set up Faction Guardians, that I will probably never empower anyone. Now let's go back to the clan boss and see if this stat change has affected the speed tune, because it's often a fine line you walk with unkillable teams. So give me a second to flip over there and we'll get into starting off that fight. And here we are back at the clan boss. It flipped over to Magic Affinity today, so I have to pick a slightly different team where I don't have a weak affinity damage dealer, but as you can see here, the only difference between these 2 teams is my Poisoner. I tend not to like Frozen Banshee that much, because if you get a resist on her A3 that places the poison sensitivity, she does nothing in terms of placing poison with our A1. I find Occult Brawler to be much more reliable, but of course I don't want to use him here because he would be weak affinity to the clan boss. So how this worked historically, for those of you who aren't necessarily familiar with how you start this version of the Unkillable team, is it takes 3 turns, and before the stun, you have to use Painkeeper's A2. So there's a little bit of manualing involved in setup. First you get Unkillable up, then you reduce cooldowns for the Unkillables, clan boss goes, now you're slower champion, so I start with debuffs here to help everyone with more damage. Frozen Banshee starts with the A3, so she can place poisons next time. Damage dealing abilities for Maneater, damage debuffs for Bulwark, and then next up is the A2 for Painkeeper. Now, if using Faction Guardians didn't mess up the tune, I expect this to increase everyone's hit points. Actually, I just realized I messed it up. This is only the second turn. We go here. Sorry for that. That was a huge miss on my part. Next up is I expect Painkeeper to use her A2, at which point everyone's hit points will increase, and I expect that the stun will still go to Bulwark, although there is a slight chance it ends up with Sawai, and then we hit auto. So check number 1 made. Bulwark took the stun. He's slow. He hasn't taken a turn yet, so he still has Unkillable and block debuffs up, and now I should be able to hit auto, and there we go. I'm not going to make everyone watch this whole fight at this point, but I'm just going to watch a few turns to make sure that it goes as expected. Alright, so I skipped the 10 turns in and everything appears to be going well. I'm going to watch it a little bit more and then I'll skip to the end. My next important checkpoint is that I can in fact get to the full 50 turns before the clan boss ignores Unkillable. As well as, this team is right on the cusp of being a 2-key team. If I get 2 perfect runs back to back, it will 2-key, but in general I end up being a 3-key just because not everything goes super perfectly. But now with everyone getting 10% more attack for Frozen Banshee, Maneater, and Sawai, and then 10% hit points for Painkeeper and 10% defense for Bulwark, that might be enough extra damage to put me reliably into 2-key territory. So we'll see how that goes. I'm going to pause the video again and start it once we get closer to the end of the run. And here we are back at turn 48. Happy to report that none of the stat changes appear to have affected my tune. I'm going to make it all the way to turn 50 with this team, and I will say that this is a really, really strong run. At 35 million damage, so this is at this point 2-key damage with 2 turns to go. I'm so far really impressed. Is this a question of, is it the extra stats that Faction Guardians got me, or is it extra good RNG with Bulwark's passive? I don't know, but I'm super happy with these changes so far. Extra stats are rarely a bad thing, and it doesn't appear to have messed up my tune, so I think that we're going to be good to go here. I'm going to let it play out for this last 2 turns and see what we end up with in terms of damage. I'm thinking like 37 million, maybe even a little more than that, which would be really, really good. We'll also have to see if I get this kind of results on the Void version of Clan Boss. Because it doesn't have the 2-hit AoEs, it tends to not do as well with Bulwark's passive. But 36.8, almost 37 million damage. Really, really good, and this is sort of what I expected. Frozen Banshee always does, or whoever my poisoner is, does half the damage of the team. Everyone else does a lot less. But overall, a very good sign with the extra stats from Faction Guardians and not messing up my tune. So at this point, everything appears to be working as designed in terms of the release of the Guardian Ring. I think there's a lot of good things in here. I personally am not going to empower any champions anytime soon, just for it's a combination of lack of dupes and because I think duplets are more important using faction guardians, and I can't foresee a situation where I would unbind anyone. Even at 3 or 4 of a given champion, I think there's a lot more value in using them to power up the other legendaries of the same faction, instead of an 8-to-1 for Sir Nick. Like, I was initially pretty excited to get both, Tomb Lord and Sir Nick out of this, but really the cost for me is just prohibitive, so I don't foresee myself ever doing it. So I'm happy that Faction Guardians work. I'm happy that I can use the dupes I already have to get some extra power out of my champions. And it gives me targets of things to work for. Like, I might need, a few more Undead or Knight Revenant rare dupes. I can purge some other dupes where I have too many of. So I think overall this was a very successful release. I think it's 3.9 or 4.9. I forget the internal version number of this release. But overall, I'm very happy with it. Hopefully you all feel similarly. Make a comment here. Let me know what you think. If you have another way that you're using the new Guardian Ring, I'd like to hear it as well, because it's new and people will have different approaches to things. So let me know what you think. Like and subscribe. This is Ezron signing off.